Hi, and thanks for joining me today. My name is Dan Gilligan. My company is Paradigm Insurance, and we're an insurance agency. We sell insurance to businesses, a commercial insurance agency. We have some focus markets, but for the most part, we're a generalist business dealing with warehouse companies, logistics companies, retail companies, restaurants, professional services, construction, all different types of organizations. And for the most part, we deal with small business. And we look at small business as companies with under $10 million in revenue, companies with under 100 employees, companies likely similar to your company. And our intent today is to provide you with information, the perspective from somebody who's in the trenches and dealing with insurance companies and insurance policies every day for the past 30 years or so, and give you opinion, and with the hope and expectation that that will allow you to draw your own reasonably well-informed conclusions so that you can make the best decision that, possible for your organization as you go forward. Now, having said that, I'll give you the disclaimer type of language, which is that this information is general in nature. It is not legal or insurance advice. I'm not an attorney, I'm an insurance agent. And you need to refer to your own insurance program and read your own insurance policies in order to make a really clear assessment of what it is that you have. An insurance policy is a contract between you and another enterprise, and like any contracts that you have with your business, you should be having some reading them, reviewing them, having some familiarity with what it is that they do and don't do. Speaking of don't do, we are not expecting, to get right to it, for this to be a covered claim. There's a couple of reasons for that, and I'll get into that. We have requested position statements, and most carriers have provided them as far as what it is that they would do in response to receiving claims for business interruption relating to coronavirus. And they've all been pretty clear in stating that they expect to rely on two pieces of exclusionary language existing in most property insurance policies that would allow them to successfully deny coverage. And I'll speak more about that in a minute, but first I'll tell you what those two exclusions are. The first is that it is expected in the policy that in order for coverage to be provided, there needs to be some type of physical property damage. Physical property damage meaning my roof blew off in the hurricane, my building burned down, I was robbed, things that allow for there to be some type of evidence that something in fact happened. These are easily adjusted claims. You say, hey, look, it was here, now it's not here. I have a problem, I can't have my employees in, so please provide me with revenue for the next X number of months as per articulated in the insurance policy. And those, that generally works out fine. The problem with coronavirus is whether or not the existence of this bacteria, microorganism, virus, in fact constitutes property damage. Whether that virus exists in your own facility or is present elsewhere, such as in China, and you have part of your supply chain emanates from China, that can affect your business. So it is expected that carriers will say, no, this does not constitute what we all know and traditionally understood to be property damage. It's an arguable point. The second piece of exclusionary language, which is likely more problematic in arguing for an affirmation of coverage, is that there are specific virus, microorganism, pollutant type of exclusions in the policy. And they're pretty clear. And that really, the advent of those type of exclusions came about initially in the early 90s after Legionnaire's disease And then with the advent of SARS, Ebola, Zika, there was further tightening up of that and a further seeking of making those almost universal type of exclusions, which they in fact now are. You may also have some familiarity with what's referred to as civil authority coverage in your policy, or what's referred to as a dependent property business interruption coverage in your policy, and those may be worth a more thorough review. However, in all likelihood, they will still be subject to that virus, microorganism, pollutant type of exclusion. So, the expectation is that in all likelihood, all of these claims will be declined. So then you may say, well, geez, could I have bought this? Did I do the wrong thing in not purchasing what was available and what maybe should have been, in retrospect, purchased? And the short answer is there was no practical market for a small business to buy communicable disease, pandemic type of coverage. There's a very limited market for it, for specialty type of exposures, and or for large companies. So if you're a company that does business on a global basis and you may have 500, 1,000 hotel properties around the country, this type of coverage on a limited basis was available. It comes with this type of informational research type of support that shows different pandemics and where in the world there is having some type of an outbreak that may affect your business, and you can choose to run your operations in a modified way to reflect that and do what's best for you. But really, for a small business, we have a small business here. We don't buy pandemic communicable disease insurance. And there's other reasons why that's really not something that the industry wanted to deal with, mainly because insurance deals with stuff when it's limited and when it's a surprise. So if it's something that at this point is kind of expected to happen, that's going to deal with the entire, potentially the entire population, the industry will seek to protect itself. And when it saw these other things coming down the pike, that's what it did, and that's where we are. So, are there other ways to find coverage besides simple interpretation of the policy that we've just run through? And there are. I'm reminded of September 11th when there are war policies in war exclusions in these policies. They've been there for years, for forever. I think war is always thought to be something that is simply uninsurable. And at September 11th, there were people in the media and even politicians saying, "It looks like we're at war." So we're sitting back as agents and saying. And then one carrier actually kind of opened the floodgates and said, look, we're not going to consider this under the war exclusion. We're paying all these claims. The rest of the industry followed, and those were all covered claims. The same thing happened, I can remember, in the early 90s. There was a flood, the Chicago River in downtown Chicago. Something very unexpected happened. Something broke, a dam, I forget what it was. But it released all this water into the downtown city, flooding these office buildings. Now, flood, we buy separate flood policies from the NFIP, from the government. Flood's an excluded peril, like war. But there was one carrier who said, look, unexpected, wacky thing. We're not going to present and argue that this was a flood. We're just going to pay the claims. The rest of the industry followed. Is it possible that will happen here with the coronavirus, where you'll basically just have the industry say, look, we're not going to rely on potential exclusion arguments. We're simply going to pay the claims? I don't think so. I don't think so, because this isn't, a few businesses in Chicago or Manhattan. This is a ton of money. It's simply too big for carriers to manage, as far as I can tell. Okay, are there other ways that this could become a covered claim? Potentially. we have accounts in my office who have expressed to me that they think that they are going to need to push this and determine if they can find coverage. And the process would be that claim in all likelihood would get denied, and then you sue the carrier for not properly interpreting the policy and for providing you with a declination of coverage in a way that was really, in error. And you ask the court to interpret that policy and see if the carrier's position is really correct. And the court will do that. And is it possible for the court to find coverage here? It's possible. The third way is something that's actually taking place in New Jersey, and that's where we're located in New Jersey. The New Jersey legislature has put forward a bill for consideration that essentially says that carriers, when presented with a coronavirus business interruption claim, will be required to suspend the exclusionary language in that policy and will be required to simply pay those claims. So, we'll see what develops there. There are certainly clients that we have here who are cheerleading for the New Jersey legislature to, successfully pass that. Now, realistically, again, that would be something that would likely be mimicked by a number of other state legislatures. And I'm not sure how well that comports with, it doesn't, with, usual contract law. Is it right? Even though people truly dislike insurance companies, we all know that, and, everybody wants them just to pay everything. I get it. But that actually is a contract between two private parties, and the government's role in interceding in that, I'm not sure is supportable. At the same time, we're in a crisis that is unprecedented. So, my own opinion is that due to what I just said, this is something that is massive enough for only a government enterprise, for only the United States government to deal with. And not to get political, but I'm no fan of another, $5-10 trillion in debt. But if there is going to be any type of mitigation, reimbursement, that would seem to be what we're looking at. So the main point here is, as we've advised our clients, is that we need to look at this as in all likelihood something that will not be covered by the insurance companies. Small chance at the as outlier type of considerations, but that really seems to be what the expectation is. That's the reasonable expectation. So I hope that this has been helpful to you and informative and interesting. If you want to reach out to me, Dan Gilligan, Paradigm Insurance, the website, and all that kind of stuff. So thank you very much for your attention.